Hello, my name's Julia, and today we're going to be painting a Stargazer lily. We are going to be painting in acrylic paints. You don't need any experience. And we are going to be using acrylic paints. They're just a really nice paint that isn't too translucent. So the first thing you want to do is start off sketching in your Stargazer. So luckily all flowers are different, so your petals don't need to be perfect. I always like to, if I'm painting a really big flower, just kind of mark halfway points on each side of the canvas. And then I'm just going in and adding in the front 3 petals first. And then I'm going to add in 3 more petals kind of in the background there. So I am using a water-soluble pencil, and that way it doesn't blend in too much with the paint or kind of stand out too much. You do want to kind of knock back your outline with your pencil drawing so it doesn't show up too much, especially with the white petals. So the first thing you want to do is take your pointed brush and just fill in all of the petals with a layer of white paint. And you might wonder, hey, why white paint? The canvas is white. Well, that doesn't matter. You want it to be kind of all filled in with paint. Then you're going to take your bristle brush, and you can use fluorescent pink, bright red, or you can mix the 2 colors together. And we're going to use the brush as a stamp, and you're going to start in the center and you're going to work your way out towards the edge of the petals. So you want it to be the most vibrant right in the middle of the petals. So right in the center, you'll keep adding layers, and towards the edges you want it to get a little bit lighter. You can also use a 1-inch flat to very lightly kind of brush over your little speckles that you make, and that can give it a little bit more direction. So you're just going to go through and you're going to keep layering it and layering it until it gets as bright as you want it to be, especially right there at the corners on the petals that are behind, because you really want them to look like they are behind the petals in the front. So I'm just going in and adding more layers. Then I'm going to take my smaller pointed round brush and I'm going to add in some actual lines. I'm using a lot of paint there, so the bright red and the fluorescent pink, and adding a line that kind of curves in the shape of the petal. And then I'll take that same brush and kind of add little spots. You want them to be really random, some big, some small, some far apart, some next to each other. So I'm going in and just adding in all of those little details and then lightly brushing over them with the 1-inch flat. You barely want to touch the canvas. It's just to smear it a little bit and to give the petals some movement and some direction. At any point, if you want to, you can go in with your pointed brush and white paint and you can go over the edges. You want to just keep going over them, making sure that they're very, very bright and making sure that the petals that are in front really stand out. So now I'm going in and I'm adding white over the center areas, so they're kind of tall, skinny, triangular shaped brush strokes. And that's where we're going to fill it in with green later. If you don't fill it in with white first, you're going to see the red through the green, because acrylic paint can be pretty transparent and it would appear very dark, and we want it to be really vibrant, kind of light green. So that's why it's really important to paint it white first. So I'm just going through and adding in more details, adding in more layers, and just kind of building it up with a small pointed brush. So you definitely want to take a step back and look at it from far away, see what you think, see if you want to add more. And I like all of my petals to be a little bit different. You can also wrap the petals around the edges of the canvas. And when you get to a good point where you're ready for it to dry a little bit, you can go in and start filling in your background. I actually love a Stargazer with a white background. It just really pops and stands out to me, but this time I decided to do kind of a green, blurry background like you would get if you were taking a photograph of a lily and you wanted the background to just kind of be blurred out. So I am using Phthalo Green, some really bright yellow paint. I love yellow and black mixed together. It gives like a nice neutral green, and I'm adding a little bit of white in there. I'm doing a lot of short brush strokes so that we get a lot of texture, and then I'm brushing over them to kind of blend them in more. So I just kind of want spots that are dark, spots that are light, and I want them kind of blended in. If you continue to brush over the whole thing over and over, eventually it'll just be kind of one shade of green. So you don't want to brush over it too much, but if you want it blended, you'll have to do a couple layers. So whenever you're ready, you can go in with that bright green, so phthalo green, and some really bright cadmium yellow light or chrome yellow, and paint over the center lines where we made those brush strokes. And then you want to go in and add the center pieces of the flower, so the stamens and the piston. So I'm doing the piston right now. And I'm filling it in. It's kind of intimidating when you're going over it after you've worked on this flower for a while, but the more confident you are in your brush strokes, the better they're going to be. If you're really nervous and kind of shaking, you're going to see that energy in the brush strokes, so you kind of just want to go for it. And I like to dip my brush in two colors at once, so I'll have yellow on one side and the darker green on the other side, and that way I can kind of shade as I go without having to go in and paint them in individually. So you want to layer them on top of each other, and then when you're done, you're going to add on the little pieces on the end. So that's kind of where the pollen is. You know how stargazers, if you leave them on a table, they'll kind of shake that dust. So they're going to be orange and black. So you can mix together some yellow and fluorescent pink to get a really bright orange. And I'm using very short brush strokes on those so they look kind of fuzzy. And that's the last step. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.